Yeah, here we are. It's the second hangout. I think we wanted to do that much earlier. I'm Ruven from Nobody Listens, and this is Kristi Winters, who I did the last hangout with, when we talked about how the language you use can influence what you think about the world. And I think we phrase this as speaking German makes you sexist, because
To be
that is a,
provocative.
yeah, because this is YouTube and otherwise nobody would click anything. Of course, that's not really the case, but you could argue, and I actually did argue, that German is a more sexist language than English.
Right,
And
because in German, for the non-German speakers, everything that a woman does is denoted in the language by adding an "in" to the end of it. So I am a doctorin, not doctor.
exactly, exactly. And there is where English has the word the, German has like 8 different words, which is der, die, and das, male the, female the, and non-gender the, and then like forms that come from that. That is kind of weird. I go into that more in the last hangout, which will be linked in the description, or just go to my channel. And this time I wanted to go more into the usage of words in different language, or just the words we use to describe ourselves, to describe others, and how that colors our what I'm talking about language and I can't find the word. You know what a perception, our perception of the world. Like I almost bit my tongue thrice with that word.
But you got it out in the end.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Perception, and the way we describe ourselves and what we think about others when we hear certain terms. Like what is going on in Germany right now with that is quite interesting. You know that there is I'm going to say a refugee situation, because
Right.
I'm not going to say a refugee crisis.
Yeah.
There is like a refugee situation in Germany. And when the refugees came, they were described with the word Flüchtlinge. And then someone declared the word Flüchtlinge, which is just the normal word for refugees, but because it had been used so much, it was unofficially declared to be politically incorrect. And then the radio started to say not Flüchtlinge, but Geflüchtete. It comes from the same root word, Flucht, that means flight, but it's another way to make a person out of that word. And it means the same thing. It's just Flüchtling was said so much that people just assumed it was a negative term. And now today, I hear a completely different word for the first time when talking about the modern refugees, which is Vertriebene. Vertriebene means the ones that were driven out. And that's the word which is mostly used to describe refugees after World War II. And now that is becoming the third word.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Have you heard that too? Have you heard Vertriebene already?
A little bit, insofar as for a very long time in the U.S., as an American, we have very culturally different attitudes toward immigrants and what were called illegal immigrants. And for most of the time that I remember growing up, people talked about illegal immigration and illegal immigrants. But then in the Obama era, at least that felt like that's my recollection of the time period, people began to use the word undocumented, using the argument that no person is illegal. And the focusing on the fact, there's the fact that when you overstay your visa, it's a civil crime. It's not like something prosecuted in criminal court. It's a civil violation. So when people were saying that the person is undocumented, it was a way to disconnect the notion of them being illegal. And so that's maybe perhaps a similar, although we didn't, undocumented is a very, it basically, it's the other side of the legal coin, right? You're in violation of the law, but technically you're undocumented. That's the legal technical definition. So it was the same concept, but the language itself wasn't as charged.
I actually wanted to go into the American situation later. The question was if you already heard the new term. I assume that you also catch some German news radio.
Oh, no, I thought you asked if there was something similar in English.
I know that there is, like,
okay,
because
okay.
I always get both. Because I'm not sure if that's the same for everybody who lives in a non-English speaking country, but I get like twice the news because I'm on the internet with all the English stuff. And then when I drive and I'm too lazy to put on Spotify, I listen to a news channel most of the time. And so I get all the German news. And
I see more headlines because I do live in an English bubble. And also I deliberately consume a lot of American politics, and I don't listen to the radio, German radio very often. So I don't get exposed to it as much. But no, I remember seeing the term you used first, the Flüchtlinge. Is that right?
Flüchtlinge.
Yeah.
It's so cute how all you guys have problems with the umlaute.
Yeah, it is. They say make your mouth say an O, but you make an E sound or something. Yeah. But that's a word that I recognize from like the daily news that I see flashed up on the Hauptbahnhof, where they display like the layest news headlines and little blurbs, and that's a word that I remember seeing, but I wouldn't have recognized the other words as being a replacement for that. I don't think right away. Maybe the was it geflogen?
Geflüchtete. Geflüchtete. Flucht and Flug are translations of the two different meanings of the word flight.
Right. To fly.
A refugee is Flucht, and flight is in a plane is Flug. Flug.
Right.
Flug, because Fluch is curse, and this is a weird language.
Right. So the idea here is that the intention of the word goes from people running away from something, and to the most recent one, which is that they were driven out by war. And of course,
and
then
this is the term that was originally used to describe people after World War II. Mm-hmm. And now we have a more modern term, like the word Vertriebene sounds very old-timey to me. And the word Flüchtlinge, I don't know if I ever heard that in heavy usage before 2013.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's how language evolves and changes. And that is especially true in the United States when it comes to ethnicity, background, and race. We have words that have changed a lot. Right. When it was acceptable to say Negro, that was the term of art used to discuss people. Yeah, that sort of thing. And I think someone made the point that so a word becomes associated in a negative way, like Negro, like the United Negro College Fund, the NAACP. That's what their name was when they were founded. But then that word becomes sort of tainted and seen as racist. So then it moves on to person of color or something, and then that word becomes tainted. The problem isn't the words. The problem is the society. And so this idea of changing language. Yeah, I see where it has a role in reframing things. But of course, it's just going to be a moving target because the problem is the underlying society that you're trying to fix. And I just thought that was sort of an interesting analysis of the way that language and society interact to use words up, or in some case, reclaim them, like gay or queer. They can, in this case, be reappropriated by a community. It's an interesting. It's an organic and living process, language.
Yeah, I'm really fond of reclamation, even though I'm not really part of any group that can reclaim anything really. Like the two things. I mean, I could reclaim queer because I am some kind of non-straight and I don't know what exactly, but there is nothing to really reclaim for someone who is disabled but can walk. Like I could reclaim the word cripple, which is related to the word cripple, if I was someone who is more like physically disabled, but I don't feel comfortable reclaiming something where I'm just kind of sort of part of the group because I'm disabled, but that's with my nervous system and not with my outer body.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like in terms of having a disability, you have something that is a challenge to your life, right? In the way that other people are challenged, but because it's not visible in the way that people expect with the word and associate with the word, then yeah, it's harder to sort of claim that identity. No matter, even if it's entirely valid.
Yeah,
because you have to explain things.
I like the idea of reclaiming a word because I just think one of the points I wanted to make is that we, as in the progressive community or whatever we are always playing catch up to everyone else. I feel like we don't really decide language usage. Like everyone else decides that's around us. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yes. I mean, I guess I can see that certainly there's a lot of reactivity in the progressive community.
Same with your example. It's with all the terms for black people, and I think that is the neutral term. You actually forgot the most neutral term, which is black people. People who don't like them use this and that word, and then black people and people who like black people can't use that anymore and have to move on to something else. Same with queer people. Like something becomes an insult, or something is already an insult, and then they have to move on to other terms and to other terms. And we always just kind of react.
Yeah, although I think, part of that reaction is basically encouraging people to find other words to say the same thing. So, for instance, the R word. I grew up, and when my mom started, she was a bookkeeper for a group called the Association of Retarded Citizens, because in the 80s, that was actually, it was being described as retarded. It was a step up from whatever had come before, but then through the 80s and 90s, more was done to understand about cognitive disabilities and developmental disabilities or delays, people who are developmentally delayed. And so the language, the word retarded was dropped out of use. And even in my household growing up, my mom, that was like, that was a word that we weren't allowed to use, like the N word and curse words. And it was just because she worked with people who they suffered those insults. So she wasn't going to have us saying those words in her house, kind of thing. And so it became the ARC. It became the AR. It became the ARC for the letters. And
what does it stand for? I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah, it's just a local group. So it was the Association for Retarded Citizens, ARC, and then they changed it.
It means the same thing.
It still has the same letters, right? But it has a new meaning now, and it has a new symbol. So they just took the letters. Yeah.
So they changed it completely.
But yeah, so they changed their brand, as you want to say, completely. Like nobody would look at it now, and because it's capital A lower R lower C, they don't even keep the dots anymore. And so in that case, when somebody wants to use, I had a conversation going back with the Woolly Bumblebee's husband about it, because he uses that word, and a lot of us, I wince when I sort of physically wince at it, because it's a word, because again, it's not an abstract concept to me. I had, as well as my mom working for there, I had a cousin who had severe mental difficulties. And yeah, you know, I just think of her when someone hurls that word and it hurts me a little bit, you know. So, and so it's just, you know, just use a different word. I understand what you're trying to get at, you know, like you're being slow, or you're being, you know, deceptive, or you're, you know, like you're being thick on purpose, whatever, but just find a different word for that. And I think maybe the reactivity isn't so much to try to take over language as present alternatives. Or, you know, even with misgendering people, just, you know, encouraging people to use the correct pronoun for the person that they, you know, the gender that they identify with, or if they're non-binary, what they prefer, just like you would with a person who is cis. You know, it's just the same thing but slightly different.
No,
And so we're not quite as aggressive in that
it's
way.
not even slightly different. Just hear what the person wants you to call them, and then call them that.
Well, okay, I'm
Not
going to say I
just
have, no, if I can say, I had two trans friends, and there was this moment in time for a while when I was getting used to making the switch, and that's what I'm thinking about in terms of that, right?
with someone
Be
you knew before they transitioned.
Yeah, yes,
I had that same problem with someone.
that's,
It's like,
yeah. And so I had to like always just like pause for a second and check, and that got easier and easier, and now I don't have to do it. But for the first time, when you're introducing somebody to the concept of not misgendering someone, just make a little effort, you know. You wouldn't call me, well, maybe you would, but, you know, not you, but, you know, you wouldn't misgender me. So if you can show me that courtesy, why can't you extend that field of empathy and just make that little, just check and then proceed? Because like I said, you check, it goes faster, faster, and then, you know, like with Natalie, I don't even remember who Natalie was now before she was, you know, like when she was ContraPoints, what her dead name is. I actually don't even remember what it's Natalie. But I remember for when it was first happening, it was kind of, you know, you probably, like you said, you have a friend, you just have a little moment of time where you're making the switch to with them, you know, now that you know. And yeah, so I think we need to acknowledge that. I think it helps to say, look, I make mistakes and I had to think about it. But you know what? Pretty soon you don't think about it anymore because it's just Natalie. You know, it's just ContraPoints. That's who she's always been in my mind now. So.
I mean, it's really easy with her because in the older videos, she has been playing like all kinds of different genders and all kinds of different personas. So when I started watching her, which was a year before her coming out, I'm gonna say, I always just assumed that she was trans and just not fully transitioned, because all the stuff that she was doing back then would have been amazingly brave for someone who's cis. Like, I'm the guy who went out dressed as Princess Leia last year. And even I've got to admit, if that was done while she assumed that she was a cis man, that takes balls.
So what was your Leia experience like?
My Leia experience was actually not as weird as I expected. Like, some people said it was cool. A lot of people in other Star Wars costumes wanted to take selfies with me. And
oh, cool.
Like, the only negative thing was that I was freezing my butt off. Because it was really sunny when we made the dress, and then we went up north. I was saying with Maddie back then, I'm gonna link a picture of that because down there, because I'm not gonna search for that now. But from 2 bed sheets, we made this really cheap dress, and then we did my hair and did some makeup on me. And in London, or around London, where Maddie lived at the time, it was really hot. And so when we went up to, I don't even remember where, I'm gonna say Manchester, but I'm almost sure it wasn't Manchester, but we went to a con, and it was freezing cold there. And so that was the only negative experience. So I had a nice chat with someone dressed as Chewbacca and someone who was dressed as Trump as Deadpool, protesting the real Trump as a joke. It was really nice to me, and we chatted about it.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for that picture now. I'm pretty sure it's on Twitter. Like,
but the train ride up, you didn't have any problems?
On the train, I was dressed as I usually am, just without the beard. And when I went back, I just had my nails done. But yeah, that's not really much of a problem, I think, anymore. But I actually have had a lot of problems with people assuming that I'm a girl when I grew up, because I used to have this hair and man boobs, and so that was a bit of a problem for me. So I'm actually a cis person who is used to misgendering.
Right.
Which
so
is
you have some.
So I actually empathize a lot with trans people.
Yeah. I was only ever misgendered that I can remember once, but it's also, I've got short hair now and I had very short hair at the time. And I was working as a shop assistant and I was turned away and my head was turned away. And it was like a 7-year-old kid who was like, "Excuse me, sir." And I turned around and he went, "Oh." But that obviously is like nothing. That's just, that's nothing like actually being misgendered. But that's, I've lived a very cis privileged life in that way. And so trans issues were something, it's been a really, a completely new, and I don't want to say world to me, but meeting people and having friends. And it's really only happened in the last 3 or 4 years that people who are trans have come into my life. And I've tried to be as open as possible and as listening as much as possible and not talking so much about the issues that they face. I'm pretty much like a listen person, not a have an opinion person on those topics.
I mean, that is something that a lot of people should take to heart, especially on YouTube, because I know that a lot of people who probably haven't made it this far into the video, but who will watch that, should really take that to heart. Because I assume those kinds of people are going to watch, right? Because you're on the stream?
I hope so. Well, I'll share this on my channel too, so a few more people will see it.
Yeah, of course. That is what I mean. So a lot of people will just leave a hateful comment and then don't see.
Yeah, that's my channel. Till they get muted, yeah. But I think this is it. Like, I feel like the best thing I can do as an ally is, number one, just be a good friend. Just that's my first job. And to listen and try to understand their perspective or perspectives. And when I'm asked about issues, I kind of defer to what my trans friends say. I don't give, like, I have my own opinions, obviously, but when it comes to a topic like that, I'm deferring to the expertise of people and talking about them, rather than like I said, making a video giving people my opinions on who I think they should be. That's what happens on YouTube.
Yeah. By the way, before we move on to the next thing, I found the 2 pictures that were on the Twitter.
Can you screen share?
Yeah, I can screen share if I figure out.
Okay.
This is the camera out.
Let's see him. Yeah, it's the green arrow button, and then hit the blue button for entire window.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So here we are.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. That is fantastic. You guys made that out of 2 sheets? I was thinking of like a double toga, but you guys went proper. Like, that's a great dress.
Yeah, I have no idea how we did that. And we didn't even have a sewing machine. We didn't have a sewing machine. I was there for, I'm going to say 11 days, staying over at Maddie's mom place at the time. And we just went to London museums and shops. And when we weren't there, we worked on this dress and a guitar that was completely fucked up. Like, it's still not fully assembled, but I hope that she assembles the rest of it when she gets around to it, and I get to demo it, because that is going to be an awesome piece of gear. And the second thing is this.
Oh wow, that's great. That is great. That's a great picture too. It looked like a really fun con.
Yeah, it was like the first day not so much, but the second. No, this is actually the end of the first day was
Okay.
great. Cons are always an amazing experience because you like see so many different people, and not just the famous people, just normal people who are fun to hang around with.
Yeah, it's like when you go see a band you like, you have
Yeah.
something in common with a bunch of strangers. And if so people become like really cool and chill and open and happy, and at least the kind of bands I have gone to, I guess that maybe more aggressive bands or hostile places, but I think generally, yeah, like going to those
the
kinds
more
of
aggressive
venues.
bands, there is a thing you hear over and over and over again, is that aggressive bands have like these really nice fan bases sometimes, which you just wouldn't assume. Everyone just listens to really aggressive music, and then when they get around, everyone is just really, really chill.
Oh,
And I heard that so much that I'm tired of hearing that it's just normal to me that extreme bands have nice fan bases. And not all. I mean, there is a lot of stuff going on, like in Norway and Sweden, where extreme bands don't have good fan bases.
Yeah.
But mostly there are a lot of really hard bands that are really, really chill and have really, really chill fan bases.
Yeah. So it's nice to go to the cons or whatever and basically nerd out with other nerds.
Yeah, I haven't been in a long while. It's a shame. I really should go somewhere. But maybe I'm gonna plan
con. I think they do a con in Cologne in the summer every year, because I don't go to it, but I see they like hire bands sometimes, and they do stuff out in the public areas because there's so many people and it's summer in Germany. So yeah, but I can't remember which one it is. Might be a tech con.
Yeah, I don't really do tech. I just do music and nerd stuff. Like working on this guitar was probably the biggest tech-related thing I've done, but that is also a music thing, and so I kind of know how that works. Moving on to actual language stuff again.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to
I wanted to make a point about something you said ages ago.
Okay.
You said you, and with that I don't mean you personally, just you generally.
Yeah, that's a problem in English.
We have a word for that. You could say man, which is M-A-N, which is one. It's one can do that is still used, and the word man, either the word man in English or the word man, M-A-N-N, which means the same thing, is actually derived from an older word, which is the word man, which just means someone. So
I think that the British
want someone.
I think the British can get away with saying one. I don't think Americans can. I think it sounds like a real affectation with an American accent to say, well, what one would do in this situation, I think, is, I for some reason with like a really plummy British accent, like the Queen. Oh, one wouldn't want to do that kind of thing. She can get away with it. I can't get away with that. I think Americans, that's British privilege. That and being, according to Kevin, being slightly racist to other people in your country, like Welsh people and Scottish people.
Just imagine someone like Maddie or Kevin doing that.
Yeah.
Saying because before I knew any actual British people, I always just assumed British people were like John Cleese walking to the Ministry of Silly Walks just without the silly walks.
Okay.
And then I met some actual British people, and I just couldn't imagine them saying something like that. It's just.
Yeah, I think Kevin would almost be putting on airs to have him say one. I mean, maybe, but he seems, I don't know, maybe it's an upper class thing as well. Like
I think it is. I think it is. I mean, the
but it's not in German. But it's not in German.
No, no, in German it's just normal word usage. We just have it. It's not even a regional thing. Everyone says it.
Yeah. And that's a nice thing about German, is that you actually have a gender neutral term to use to mean
in
you.
This case.
Yeah. In this case.
Otherwise, that is what I said was the problem last time. We don't have gender neutral stuff.
Right. Well, you have some neutral. Yeah, you have too many gender cases, in my opinion. 3 is too many.
Like, this time, listen to this, guys. We are 2 SJWs, and we agree that there are too many genders.
Yeah, there you go.
In this one case.
There you go. Make that into a clip. Yeah. So yeah, back to language.
Yeah, back to language. Getting away from the 2 different or how many ever different languages and to what we use to describe ourselves. I just mentioned the 2 SJWs thing because I think we should just reclaim a few words. When I say they, I mean people who aren't SJWs, people on the right, whoever, are always using words to describe us, and I think SJW is an amazing word. We should use it. And it describes everyone from unassigned people like me to feminists to Black Lives Matter people and whoever. And I don't see why we shouldn't use it. And
yeah, I use it as a shorthand, or I use it probably, to be honest, ironically. But it's a label that I don't go out of my way to deny. You know, it's not, when someone calls me an SJW, I'm like, whatever. You know, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it initially was a word that meant someone who fought for social justice, and it was the right who took it and turned it into a smear.
Really? So, I thought it started as a smear.
No. I'm pretty sure it was started off on the left, and then the right sort of took it and used it and added a sneer sort of to it. Yeah, so, you know, its history actually starts off, from my understanding, in a more positive connotation anyway. So, and it's not one that I hate. I mean, it's not a term that I, you know, if someone called me an SJW, I'm not going to say, you say anyone who disagrees with you is an SJW. I mean, I'm not going to use it the way that people bristle at being called a Nazi. You know, because obviously social justice is a good thing and Nazism sucks ass. So.
I just went to Know Your Meme to look up the origin of the term. And when you type in SJW is not a meme. They just show you, oh, it actually is, but it's mostly anti-SJW memes. Like, did you just assume my gender and like,
yeah, so you probably have to put history behind it.
Yeah, no, I actually found a page.
Okay. And?
Oh, it's 12 years old. Oh no, that would be keyboard warrior.
See, that's kind of old. I don't remember hearing it before, sort of the mid 2000s.
Yeah,
sorry, the 10s, mid 2000s.
The blog Social Justice Warriors Do Not Engage, which is an anti-left blog.
Okay.
So it started off as a smear word.
Okay, so I
think it would, and it's amazing how they made a term which describes what I want to be, basically.
Well, then, yeah, I think proudly wear the badge of SJW.
Yeah, I'm going to. And I just hope that some other people are going to, too. And this is a weird language. Yeah, going to.
Yeah, going back a little bit to the word man in German, if you want one example of where feminism has changed language and reshaped language is the use in English of mankind, or man to mean all humanity.
Yeah.
And feminists pointed out that you're using a word that represents a male body to represent everybody. And so, when the founders, wrote famously, all men are created equal, they meant white guys. um, and later on, people wanted to read into, post sort of 1970s, people said, oh, when they said man, they meant, equal, that that means everybody, not just men. And that
Yeah.
was, for a long time, that was the interpretation of man and mankind. And then feminist critique came along, and you see the changes from spokesman to spokesperson. Anytime you used to have sort of man at the end, chairman, to just chair, because chairperson is weird and chair is
Yeah,
perfectly acceptable.
I completely agree. Like, I like them being described as chair, but not as chairperson.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
me, chairman sounds all right, and chair sounds all right, but
Yes. So that's it's an example, maybe, to what you're saying about being more proactive about language and defining how words are used and what words, basically, because it's like George Carlin said, we think in language, therefore the quality of our thoughts are reflected in the quality of our language. And if we think spokesperson or spokesman and chairman, we're always kind of putting that man element on it. So, it's good to reflect on what assumptions we bring to a word because of, in this case, the other words it's made up of.
it's easier for me to not assume that someone is male when I read something in English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
I think we might have brought this
it
up last time, but in Indiana Jones, the third one, when I watched it in
we
German,
brought that up, yeah. We had to
yeah,
watch that in German, and the joke just didn't land.
right, because she was doctorin or Arztin, I can't remember which doctor she was, but anyway, because they used the female profession word, you knew immediately it was a woman, whereas doctor in
Yeah.
English allowed it to be, people's assumptions would be it would be a man because it's playing off of their sexist sort of cultural framework, right?
Especially with the movie taking place, I
When
think,
it did,
5 years
right?
after World War II.
Hmm. And so then you've got, the assumption that it's a man, and it turns up and it's a beautiful blonde, so that's how the joke works in English, but not in German. Yeah.
I think that humor is very hard to translate anyway. Not
I think it's
all. I mean, Monty Python's is sometimes funnier in German. And I tried that. There was a German comedian who was very similar to the Monty Pythons, which is Loriot. And I tried to translate some Loriot back, not back, into English in like a Monty Python style, and see if it works. And it completely works.
okay.
I can send you that later, or put that in the description. I hope. I'm gonna make a video on that, but I'm gonna send you the script beforehand. I don't know if you're aware of that, Herren im Bad by Loriot. I translated
No,
to the gentleman in the
no.
bathroom. It's a skit. It's a cartoon, or it was originally released on radio, I think, but then he drew a cartoon for it. It's like two guys around the age of 50 finding themselves in a bathtub in a hotel together, arguing about who has the right to be there and who doesn't. And then they go into politics and stuff. And
Oh, that
like
seems hilarious.
in the first 5 sentences, they make out who actually whose bathtub it is, but the other guy just stays in, and they keep arguing. And that also works in English. And I just find that a lot of comedies, when you translate them, just die. And a lot of
Right.
jokes just die. But
Yeah, I know that Eddie Izzard, for instance, he does his comedy in at least 3 different languages, German, French, and English. I think he's learning Spanish as well. And people ask them if it's difficult, to do his comedy, his particular, his comedy in other languages, but his is very absurdist. So his jokes come from the element of surprise when he puts together two things that don't belong together, or two things that are so different or whatever. They just, it's that sort of surprise that makes you laugh at the absurdity of it. And that kind of comedy, like Mr. Bean, works internationally because, well, he's of course a physical comedian, but he's playing on exaggeration, and you're laughing at what's happening around him, and the surprising situations he finds himself in. I think some British comedy, though, because it's so dependent on plays of word within the language, that it would be more difficult. Like they have pot noodles, and I remember watching an episode of Have I Got News for You, and they were just doing things that rhymed with pot noodles, like stop pot noodles and all these sort of things, and all of it depended. If you tried to translate that, it probably wouldn't work because of the rhyming. So yeah, I think some kinds of comedy probably do work really well, and maybe others that are more based on the structures or the particulars of the language would be more difficult.
I mean, Mr. Bean transcends like everything.
Yeah.
I know that there are a lot of like heavily disabled people who are way into Mr. Bean. And that is like the only comedian they can understand. It's just...
Yeah, it's an international comedy, his. I mean, it's for every age. Anyone watching him is going to be amused.
Yeah. And that is the thing, when people say that PC culture or whatever is the death of comedy. Just watch that guy and how everyone can be amused by him, and he's making fun of basically no one, not even himself, because he doesn't represent any group really. He's just kind of awkward, and he is not... The thing is, he is not dumb. Mr. Bean is just a bit awkward and a bit weird, and does things in a different way from how you would expect him to a lot of times. But he's not stupid at all.
I watched a very interesting video on jokes, and I wish I could remember the channel because I would totally plug it. Maybe other people who will watch this will have seen it, will remember the author and give him credit. But he had a thesis sort of on comedy, and that every joke has a victim. And in the case of Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson is always the victim of the joke.
Yes,
he's always the victim. Oh, right. So that means nobody is hurt. Everybody can watch him, and he's always the victim of his own joke. And this thing about PC culture is, it's like Ricky Gervais and his offensive, jokes, quote unquote, about trans people. It's like, who is the victim of the joke there, right? And if you make other people the victim of your joke, that is, you're going to get feedback. And I think it's an easy and lazy way to be a comedian, to make jokes by relying on lazy, racist, or sexist stereotypes. And I think that's what, when they say comedy is going to die, what we're really saying is up your game. Don't just go for, victim of people who don't have any power. Try to be funny by being witty or clever or funny, but not at someone else's expense. So that was all I wanted to say.
You notice that the guy in the blue car that Mr. Bean hates is never actually shown, and the whole joke is just that Mr. Bean hates him or her. Like, we have no idea who that is. Like, there's someone in a blue car that Mr. Bean hates, and that is the joke. The joke is the hater, not the hated.
Yeah.
Even the time when they crash cars and the other person just falls over, it's not the joke. The joke is that Mr. Bean wants whoever that is to fall over. And so we have a situation where we like the hater, but he's still the hater, and the joke is still about him. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's the victim of the joke? And I think or people who complain about PC culture are the people who want to just make those easy, lazy, bigoted stereotype jokes. So
I'm not even sure whether they actually want to make jokes or whether they just want to normalize hatred more.
Well, I'm thinking of comedians.
Joking is a defense sometimes.
I guess, and I was thinking of comedians like Bill Maher and others who say, I'm not going to go play college campuses anymore because kids today, well, they just complain. Like, no, your jokes just aren't funny to them. Like, write funnier jokes. Know your audience. So I was thinking less of the people who use it's a joke as an excuse to be jerks, and more about comedians or people who enjoy comedians and don't see the problem with what they say.
I think that people like Bill Maher just need to step up their game, basically. Like, they need to understand why people complain.
Yeah.
And see that there are actually the problems, and not they as a person. I think I'm not a fan. I don't completely hate him, but I'm not really a fan. But I think if he stepped up his game and if he actually talked to people who criticize him, he could be really good, still really good. He just needs to talk to people and not just say, oh, someone complained, they must be whatever, oversensitive. Maybe they are, but even people who are oversensitive still have points. Like, if someone goes to you because they are too sensitive and then they don't like what you say, and then you actually listen to them and adjust yourself a little. Maybe people who are not as sensitive but lean that way will like you more.
Bill Maher isn't entitled to people's laughter.
No.
And he reacts sometimes to his audience when they groan at him or they don't react in the way he expects, and he sort of chastises them.
Come on.
Some of it could maybe be playing around, but he actually is prickly enough where I think he's actually sort of offended. Like, I remember he made a joke about Black women and their weaves and their hair, and the audience didn't react well, and he sort of chastised them as, oh, blah blah blah, it gets defensive right away. Like, he's entitled to these certain particular adorations and approval all the time. And as you said, listen to your audience and get better. Change with the times, up your game, as I said. Yeah, completely.
That is true for everything, not just as a comedian, also as an artist of any kind, or as a politician too. Just listen to the people who support you. You are nothing if you lose their support.
I know. So I'm getting to the point in my life, because I'm in my mid-40s, and people in my cohort, we came up, people that I thought were pretty, who are as progressive as me growing up, and some of them have maintained that openness to evolution. And some people sort of like stopped being progressive in the 90s. Like, like don't ask, don't tell was them being progressive. And it's as if don't ask, don't tell.
That needs an explanation. How can don't ask, don't tell be considered progressive?
Because before that, you were kicked out for being gay.
Oh, so
if it was discovered, yeah, it was grounds for like dismissal. Whereas in this case, don't ask, don't tell meant if you kept your private life private and nobody asked about you or tried to invade your privacy, that was the other side of it. That you were able to continue.
I have a bad joke. I must interrupt you because I'm a white cis man, and because I have a joke. You mean if a private keeps a private with his private's private?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good. Right. So it's like some people get to a point and then they just sort of they lock into that era, and they can't continue to rethink their positions. People who, for instance, would be my age and say that there are two genders, but they also like support, marriage equality and gay rights, but they just think in this sort of binary. They aren't they haven't made the step to reconsider their views when it comes to trans people or non-binary people or anyone else how intersect. I don't really remember where I was going with this now because we talked about so many things. But staying open.
We probably both still have a lot of points to make, and we have no idea where this went. I feel we have too little material. So.
My point was that To be progressive means to never rest on your laurels. It means that you are open to the idea that society is going to continue to evolve around you, and you're going to have to continue to adapt. And I think as people get older, that they want to sort of ossify, and sort of get as far as they get, and then they think they're liberal and they don't continue to question. That was the point I was going to make.
I know that everyone who has listened to Kristi and Kristi herself thought about a few specific people who are like Kristi's age and older and who are kind of sort of progressive. How would you go to them and introduce, not you, like everyone who's listening right now, how would you go to them and pitch them new progressive ideas? Like, how would you do that? Let's say the idea of non-binary genders, for example. Or, I don't know, what is another new topic?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I guess, trans issues are sort of in that same ballpark that's moving beyond.
I said non-binary because I was kind of hoping that trans issues are mainstream now, but I guess
in our community.
Yeah, maybe what do they call it? The echo chamber is real, because I just kind of assumed that is a non-issue now.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of issues. And in a very serious manner, I know, for instance, rates the murder rate of trans women, and trans men's suicide rates. So yeah, I think in our community, it's definitely, I feel that it's there are arguments with TERFs, but for people who aren't on the TERF side, everything is sorted in that bubble. But outside that bubble, yeah.
Yeah, but the question is, how would you go to someone who thinks they're progressive and tell them, hey, you're doing great, and especially you did great in the late 90s, but now there are these new issues, can you help us out? Just a question for everyone.
Yeah, it also depends on how open the person is to listening, because you can come with the best speech, but if people have a sort of closed off view of things, then yeah, that becomes more difficult to communicate properly. So having an honest person who will ask questions, and I think can you see my point of view? Can you see where I'm coming from? Can you get them as far as that? If they're willing to at least say, okay, I want to understand your perspective on this accurately. I think that's a good first step. But if they won't do that.
Yeah, and I kind of feel sometimes that, like, these people who you are talking about, who I feel that I might become when I'm your age or a bit older, who just think that the stuff they fought for are the real issues, and now we are just doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how to approach them sometimes, and I feel that they are going to dominate the discussion for a long, long time still, because they just fought harder and are now in the mainstream.
Well, they're farther, they're in their careers, right? So they have the platforms right now.
Yeah.
And we're about, some of us are, maybe 5, 10, 15 years away from that level of influence. That's not going to be me, but people, younger than me coming up.
I mean, it would be nice. It would be nice if you were still listening in 15 years, like the 60-year-old lady doing stuff on YouTube or wherever.
It is on my bucket list to get arrested for civil disobedience after I've retired, so I don't have to worry about being on my prison record, but I do want to at one point get arrested for something I believe in through civil disobedience before I die.
Speaking of which, I just want to give a shout out. It's the 50th death day of Martin Luther King.
Yes, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about Martin Luther King on Twitter today, and yeah, that's
I haven't been on Twitter much today. I just there went the mic.
Oh no. Put it back.
Yeah, I have like a heavy mic stand, so that falls
So
over.
you don't know about the Twitter drama if you've not been on Twitter.
No, I haven't. I was just on the road all day. I had no free time. Get me up to speed.
Well, I mean, there's always Twitter drama going on. There's some jerk people who were circulating David Sherratt's picture as one of the victims of the YouTube office shooting because people are assholes, especially people who go after David. And this is just like like YouTube Twitter drama. I'm trying to think. There's and actually, Jaskula, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, and David are going to go on Andy Worski's show to talk to some alt-right people on Friday, apparently. But in sort of my corner of YouTube drama, the big news of Twitter today is that Bering got his second account banned for violating the terms of service, I assume. So Bering's second account has gone down.
I don't want to know more about this because I'm very, very proud that I only know Bering as someone who steals copyright and gets people to harass small channels. So
that's what happened on Twitter.
Twitter
Roundup.
I'm proud I don't know about that.
It's fine. He's not going to notice you.
I hope.
So yeah, that's today in YouTube Twitter news. I think that's the most exciting things that have happened.
Yeah, so. I thought someone was. I thought it was gonna be worse. I thought someone said something like, "We can't follow anything that Martin Luther King said because he was arrested." I think it was going that no. No one said that yet.
I saw a lovely picture of Obama standing in front of the statue of Martin Luther King on Twitter today. I did see that. That was a nice photo.
Is that an older photo, though?
Oh, yeah, from when he was president.
Oh, yeah. I saw that, too.
Yeah. But no, I mean, also, I kind of curate my Twitter. I don't... well, actually, I just opened up a second Twitter account where I'm following idiots. But generally, on my main Twitter account, it's where I go to get my like political news and check in with my friends and see other people who have really interesting things to say have to say. I don't use it to like fight with trolls. It's kind of I wouldn't get people in my feed going, I'm not going to listen to MLK for whatever dumb reason. So.
Oh, good.
Do you follow people who annoy you?
No, I just follow people who I want to see their stuff on there. Like with my YouTube channel and with my account on Twitter, it's kind of like a thing where, because when I set this all up, it was like a plan that Maddie and I were going to do more stuff together. And then we got both really busy. But it's officially still shared stuff. But the thing is, there's only like interesting left-wing stuff on there. And some people aren't left-wing, but they are interesting in other ways. Like, I know that Anthony Fantano is kind of an asshole and has a lot of connections to people who are even bigger assholes. But like, I follow him for music news. And this is probably like the biggest asshole I follow on Twitter.
Okay.
So it doesn't get worse than that.
I mean, I do see occasionally like Dave Rubin tweets or Paul Joseph Watson tweets or Jordan Peterson tweets because people I know are tweeting their stuff and then reacting to it. So it's not like...
I mostly just see like people like Kevin arguing with them. And so I see their stuff. Or I see like, what's her name? Claudia Brown, when she gets chummy with like, what's her face? The Boxy clone sometimes. Then I see Ahmed Skeptic. Yeah, she went ahead. Thank you.
Oh, she's got me blocked on Twitter. She's had me blocked since MythCon, when I told her that she was not going to do a good job because she doesn't have experience doing public speaking, and she doesn't have enough interest. She's not a professional to actually, entertain an audience.
I
And
don't
then,
think I'm blocked by anyone but Steve, but
oh,
like
okay.
everyone is.
I'm not. He has a bot, so it's not like he, saw your name and blocked you. It's probably because
No,
of somebody you were
I mean,
following.
I just kind of assumed that I just assumed that I said something about other disabled people because that is my blind spot sometimes. And by the way, to anyone who's watching this, or if you know someone, I really want to do a hangout where I talk about disabled people stuff. And maybe it could be a bit of an argument, maybe, because I want to have stuff explained to me. If you know anyone, tell me, and if anyone sees it who is disabled and is up for a discussion that could be a bit heated, but is mostly going to be friendly, hit me up. Getting back to the topic, that is
But
actually
can you, before you leave off, can you say what the topic would be? That
oh
might
yeah,
be, yeah.
Sorry. What I find annoying with people like Stephen, I think you did it too, and I once did it in a discussion with my grandfather, and I was later annoyed that I did it, even though it wasn't the topic at all. We were talking about something else, and it just kind of came up. When people say like gay people and trans people and black people and disabled people, and I'm going to turn this into a video, I'm really annoyed by that because disabled people are one category. They can be helped by being helped. And black people and gay people and trans people are another category. They aren't really different to other people. They're just different because we've put them in boxes. The disabled people are in another box because they are who they are. That is not something that is man-made. Every other category is. And if you put them all into one box, and if you just talk about them as a whole, you do a disservice to every minority. Because you have to help different minorities in different ways and approach them in different ways. And as I said, I'm a double minority. As someone who is disabled, I want help with my disability. I prefer not to have a disability, but that can be done, so I'm gonna need help with my disability. And with me being bi or pan or whatever, I want being bi or pan or whatever to be normalized. So those are two completely different sorts of helps I need with being part of two completely different groups. And I'm just kind of, I always get this iffy feeling when someone who is progressive and wants to help every kind of minority just puts them all into one big pile. And I just assumed that I had said something nasty to Steve and he blocked me.
Okay.
Because I can get mean about something like this is very close to my heart, like the whole topic of being disabled really gets to me, you know.
Right. I mean, I don't really like have a specific clear memory of like lumping a whole bunch of people in like you thought I might have, but at least from my understanding of like how somebody might be thinking, what they might be thinking at that point is thinking about all the different ways, forms of privilege that exist,
Yeah.
and then all of the people who don't have those privileges, right, or are disadvantaged. And perhaps it might be, for instance, one of the motivations when you're talking about groups like women and people of color, immigrants, the disabled, is actually to be inclusive.
Yeah.
In some ways, it might be to not only think about able-bodied people, but also the challenges that people who have disabilities have to face too. And those things can intersect. as well, you know, like, as you know. So I think, you know, it's possible. Like I said, you know, that's, if I were to read off a list like that, that would be my motivation, that I would be trying to actually be inclusive. Because I might have told you, when I was at the University of Essex, that was designed in the 1960s, and it's like it never even crossed their mind that someone might need crutches because they twisted their ankle, let alone somebody who had to deal with a wheelchair, or lived in, you know, either used a wheelchair or was wheelchair bound. I had a friend who had some very limited mobility, but most of the time she was in a wheelchair, and it took her 20 extra minutes to get to class every time she had a class, because of the university was on like an incline, and so there were sort of squares that would be lower, and then the next one would be higher up, and so on. It would sort of be a progression, but they didn't have elevators that would go from one side of the campus, you know, to the other. So you had to get underneath to get to the right elevator to get to the full level you wanted. And when I went with her to class, I was just astounded at what she had to endure every day, when all I had to do was run up a flight of stairs. And so, like I said, at least from my motivation, if I were making that such of a list, I would want to not see disabled people. That would be my motivation. That's all.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a
not to
good
take
point.
anything.
You,
Yes.
you know, I'm amazed that you made a good point while being able-bodied. I just assumed that
Oh, thanks.
that is your. I know how that sounds. I was kind of assumed that the only way someone would explain that to me and maybe have me even reconsider it. You didn't change my mind. You just made me consider a few things. Was while being more disabled than I am. So you as and I just noticed something, and this happened to me more than once. And I made a poetry slam text which mentioned this, and it always gets laughed, even though it literally happened to me like 2 or 3 times. When I talk about being disabled, and someone comes to me and says, "I'm disabled too, I wear glasses," and they mean it. It's not a bad joke.
Right.
So thanks for not doing that. Yeah.
Oh God, no. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I know. Actually, I saw a
that.
comedian say that about, you know, well, he was just annoyed that it was less about I'm disabled so much as people who wear glasses talking to someone who doesn't wear glasses, and then saying, "Oh, can I see your glasses?" And you take them off, you hand them over, and they put them on, and they go, "Wow, you've got bad eyes," and you're like, look, you wouldn't like take somebody's crutches away and like, "Oh, you've got a bad ankle." You know, you just like, you wouldn't do that. So why would you do it to somebody for their glasses? It's kind of sort of the similar point, but you know, the joke is turned around a little bit.
That is actually the opposite point, isn't it? That people who wear glasses are more disabled than you think they are.
No, I think it means you're taking something that is a physical flaw, and you're going, "Wow, you know, yeah, your eyes are really terrible." But it's socially acceptable because it's glasses. You know, for some reason, people think that they can say that, and they don't really think about how it sounds to the person who's going, "Yeah, my eyes suck. Thanks." Like, yeah, I know. My glasses are thick. I wear them every day. It's annoying. Yeah, you don't have to tell me that. I think that's the joke. At least that's how I took it, as someone who wears very thick glasses. But nobody's ever said, "Oh," because I tell people I have terrible, you know, I've got really, you know, thick sort of glasses. So I wouldn't be in a situation of having someone go, "Oh, you've got bad eyes." So.
Oh, by the way, I'm disabled and I wear glasses. I just
and
can't
you wear
wear
glasses,
them in,
yes.
I just can't wear them in front of the PC or when I'm reading. I just wear them outside because they are too look far away.
I need glasses for pretty much everything at my age now.
Oh, you said that I was going to make some kind of ageist joke.
Oh, that's okay. It's at my expense. I'm the victim of the joke.
No, but you already said it before I could make a joke.
Oh, I'm just trying to acclimate myself to, you know, like my middle age, because then it'll make getting old, like, you know, old age, I'm hoping, a softer landing.
By the way, one of the things well, there are two words which I never use. The first word would be handicapped, and the second word would be the second F word, which I'm not even going to say in this context. Do you know where those words come from and why you shouldn't use them?
No. I only know the word handicapped from its more of its association, with like handicap accessible or handicap parking. It's definitely a word that was ubiquitous, or probably still is, in the United States.
I don't really like it because handicapped comes from beggars. It means cap in hand. And so it means someone who can't work and has to beg. And as someone who is disabled and is trying to earn his living, this is just very insulting to me. And I don't think it should be used for disabled people at all, whether they can work or not.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Someone like Stevie Wonder is obviously disabled and obviously not handicapped because he's making millions of dollars, but he's still obviously disabled. And the other F word, as you know, means a bundle of sticks, and it comes from the burning of gay people and other queer people in the Middle Ages and shortly thereafter. And so that I don't even know if that should be reclaimed. But as someone who is not really out in his real life to most people, I'm not sure whether that is my point. And English is not my first language, and the word which the other F word often translates to is Schwuchtel, which is a very, very mild insult, which like gay people use to describe each other and themselves. So no, that is completely, that is not the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I think Dan Savage, who wrote a column, that's how I got to know him, Savage Love, and he tried to reclaim the F word. He had people write in, and he invited them to say, "Hey, fag," and eventually he said he just stopped, and he said he didn't want to do it anymore, whatever. But I know it's not something that he's continued with, and I do think it's a word that generally still has a very, very negative sort of connotation. Again, unless, as you say, it's sort of amongst friends joking around kind of thing. In that community,
I would honestly feel uncomfortable with it used while joking around.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but like you said, within that, it's a word that people wouldn't generally use except in those sort of, more known situations where people, But if you wouldn't feel comfortable with it, then yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's understandable.
One point I wanted to make last time and forgot last time is that word reclaiming actually works on the quote-unquote other side. It worked once. The word capitalist originated as a slur.
And when was that?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
When did the word capitalist?
I mean, clearly after capitalism, and certainly in like the time of the monopolies, capitalist and big rail and big steel, the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts in the United States. I think they were pretty well, and the history books refer to them, I think, as capitalists. So, what were you able to find in the Google machine?
Nothing really. I know that it has been around since Marxist times, but I don't know if it has been around before that.
Yeah, I tend to think of it more as a descriptor than a normatively negative word. You can have a critique of capitalism.
But it started out being a negative word, and it has been reclaimed into a neutral term. And that could happen with other words too, I think. So if they could do it with a big word, we can do it with a few small words. And I think it already has happened a bit, but maybe we should do more of it, because we need to start doing the language thing too. I think we just I keep seeing we and they. I honestly think that everyone can be turned into a non-asshole. When I think they, I don't mean they are like bad people who should be killed or whatever. I am saying the people who have been doing this for the past few years have the language on their side, basically, because we are trying to change stuff and they are just trying to keep everything the same. And I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
Well, I think, yeah. So it's sort of your theme of, like doing more to actively use language in a way to control the discourse.
Exactly. I think I've made all the points I wanted to make, but well, you requested it, the thing that I tagged Kevin in on Facebook.
Oh yeah, go ahead and
the
share
translation of funny words from the German language, just so we end on a bit milder note than talking about like disability and gay people being burned.
Yes.
So please. I'm going to show you something funnier than that. Where are we? Screen share.
Yep.
Yeah, so it starts off with Arschgeige, ass violin. It's a heavy insult. It's a milder form of Arschloch, which is asshole.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Yes, I can say, du bist eine große Arschgeige, which means you are a big ass violin. The second term would be Fußhupe, a foot horn, as in a car horn, which is a small dog. It's mostly used to... A small dog is a Fußhupe.
Why?
You've never heard that?
No.
You
I only learned like the stuff that's on the test.
Oh.
I don't always understand the words that I hear.
A Fußhupe, because when you walk around the city and you can step on a chihuahua and it would make a horn-like sound, that is why that is a Fußhupe.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, next.
And the next would be Fuchs Teufels Wild, Fox Devil's Wild, really angry. I think that's a regional thing, but I heard that a lot.
Okay.
Nacktschnecke, naked snail. That is how we describe a slug. It's actually like the medical term, the biological term for that animal is naked snail. And that is why many German kids believe that they are like hermit crabs. That slugs are hermit crabs who haven't found their home yet and who would then Pokemon evolve into snails.
Right.
That is how that is how language can make you understand the world in different ways.
Yeah.
The next thing, where are we? Oh, egal wie, I skipped over egal wie dicht du bist, Goethe war Dichter, because I don't want to explain that right now. I don't think it's a joke, and jokes don't get funny. Jokes lose everything that's funny about them when you explain them.
Right. Okay, so the next.
Glühwürmchen, glowwormies, fireflies. I actually... When I first heard the term fireflies, I had the same reaction that you had to glowwormies. Because that is just a strange term, kind of.
Yeah.
Streichholz, stroking wood, which means match. And Streichholz doesn't sound sexual. Stroking wood does, but streichen is not used as in wanking, and Holz is not used to describe a dick, so no, that doesn't sound sexual. The Tumblr poster made the thing. No. You know Schadenfreude, sorry, but you probably don't know what it means. It means damaged happiness. You is man, not du. Sorry. You see, audience, That is why sometimes German is a better language, because we have the word Mann with one N. But I think you know the next term, right? Fahne is known to you. Kristi, do you know
Sorry,
the term Fahne?
I had traffic in my street and I muted myself.
All right.
I'm on my phone and my screen is really, really tiny, so I can't really see the text.
Oh, the next term is Fahne.
And what does it mean?
It means breath smelling of alcohol.
Well,
Literally
I've experienced that, yes.
But one time I think I heard someone on YouTube use who wasn't German, so I think it was you. Kummerspeck, literally misery bacon, the fat you gain through comfort food.
That's a great word.
It really is. Glückspilz, luck mushroom, someone who is lucky. Mushroom as a symbol of luck is not just exclusive to German thing, right?
I think it's pretty German.
Really?
To call someone a mushroom?
No, I mean mushrooms as a symbol of luck.
No, it's a symbol of like psychedelics and food, but not luck. No, that's more like a four-leaf clover. More like a four-leaf clover.
Because there are, when you greet someone with like New Year's stuff, what you give them in Germany is a four-leaf clover. The black-clad person who cleans your who cleans your oven. I forgot the word.
Cleans your oven? A person?
Yeah.
Oven cleaner?
No. And not like your oven, but like forget it.
Your butler?
No.
Okay, that's all right. We'll move on.
Why the fuck do I not know that term?
Your English is better than my German. Way better.
Yeah.
We couldn't have done this in German.
Oh,
it's been so painful. So peinlich.
A chimney sweep.
Okay, yeah. A chimney sweep.
A chimney sweep and like mushrooms. But so that is why Glückspilz is a thing. Because it's a symbol of luck together with chimney sweeps and the four-leaf clover. Fernweh. Really?
Oh.
Like you have
Fernweh,
years in German.
I didn't know about the chimney sweep, but I know Fernweh.
Fernweh. Oh, we skipped over Scherzkeks, which is joke biscuit, a hoaxer.
Okay.
Which is someone who is funny. Who tries to be, someone who tries to be funny is a Scherzkeks. Like it's a mild insult to someone with a failed joke.
Right.
Fernweh, you know, I think together with Schadenfreude, that is the weird German word people know. Far away ache. Gänseblümchen, which is a goose floret, translated literally, or a daisy. I don't know why, probably because people assume they eat it.
Maybe. Okay.
Then we have one of the insults, the Flachwichser, which is a flat wanker. It's a heavy insult, and the implication is that you don't have to move your hand far from your crotch to play with your dick. So that is a flat wanker. Flugzeug, fly thing, is an airplane. A Fahrzeug or drive thing is any kind of vehicle. And Werkzeug or work stuff are tools. We just add Zeug to everything.
Zeug.
Wasserschildkröte, water shield toad, is a turtle. And Landschildkröte, land shield toad, is a tortoise. Ich fress einen Besen. I will devour a broom.
Means you're so hungry?
No, because I don't believe it. If I don't believe if you said something, and and I don't believe it, I can say, ich fress ein Besen.
Okay.
I can
The
also,
British.
I can, what?
Oh, the British would say, "I'll eat my hat."
Yeah, I in my head what
Yeah.
we are more practical people. We don't wear fancy hats, we work. And I think the British people just use Indian people to do that, if I understand
Yeah.
that correctly.
Well, or common people, upstairs,
Yeah, or common
downstairs.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I was going to make a more PC point.
Oh, okay.
An
About
even
like
more
Indian
PC.
colonialism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vollpfosten, full pole, another heavy insult. This wasn't an insult when I was like 12 and then suddenly became the thing when I was 13. So that is like 10 years old.
Okay.
This is a new thing. Handschuh Schneeballwerfer. I've never heard this term before. It means a
But
glove
gloves?
snowball thrower. So like Fuchs Teufelswild might be a regional thing. So I assume Handschuh Schneeballwerfer is too.
Okay.
Because German is spoken in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places, which you would know because you live in a town which has its own dialect.
Yes, Kölsch.
Kölsch, which is
they drink
both
it, they speak it.
Yes,
they are
I
it.
was. Yeah, it is. The word Kölsch describes a language, well, a dialect, something which is close to beer, and someone who is from there. It is close to beer. It is not beer.
Hey, it tastes a lot like beer and it does the job. And we only drink it in 0.2 liters. Just
What?
nail it. Like a beer shot. Three gulps and you're done.
Yeah, I forget they are also very, very small.
Yeah. Well, that's because that way, this is why the Kölsch are so friendly, right? Because the beers are very small. So if you meet somebody at the bar, you know, your carnival or Christmas market, and you start talking, they seem kind of cool. You can buy them a Kölsch, right? But if halfway through the conversation they turn out to be, you know, Republican, you can be like, okay, bye. So it makes for very gregarious people.
I actually have a question which we will discuss to end out the live stream, or maybe to segue into a sequel.
Okay.
After the Flachzange, flat pliers, another heavy insult, and the fact that we call a glove a handschuh, a hand shoe.
Right.
But now I'm gonna get back. Here I am. Oh, it has gotten dark. But a question: how have you adjusted to living in a land where you can have more than 2 different political options, where you can vote for more than 2 candidates? Like, is that weird for you?
I can't
No,
vote.
but you as in man,
But,
not as in do.
oh, right. Okay. Got it. Well, I mean, I can only speak to the do experience and watching it and being. It's definitely different to see for me. Or are you asking the audience rhetorically? I'm not sure where the question is.
I'm asking literally you, like, how have you adjusted to, like, people who argue about voting for the, let's say, whether they vote for the Social Democrats or the Socialists?
All my friends are progressive. You know, they're all very so. You know, when it comes to politics, you know, they would prefer the government be slightly more left. You know,
Yeah.
or they're upset with the SDP. But yeah, it's different being in a country where people have to form coalitions, and there is a government will stop if people can't find a way to agree, and that's very different from the U.S. system. So that's is a surprise for me, because in the U.S. system you can stop a lot of things because of the division of power and the checks and balances. So it's a more, you know, when you have when you elect a government, it's a bit like a dictatorship until the next election, then you can maybe put somebody else in, you know. But it's sort of one party rule generally, or coalition rule. There's not a lot of opportunities for interventions and changing things, and that produces a different kind of government than the system that we have in the States, where there's a lot of blame that goes around for failures, and so things don't get done. That's why it took so long to get even the start of a national healthcare system.
All right, that is very interesting and a very good end, because the next thing I want to do on this channel is the big discussion. What the fuck has happened in the last 6 months with the politics of our countries?
Yeah,
with
that'd be
me,
great.
you, and Kevin, because we have done a political discussion about Germany like 6 months ago on the evening of the election.
Yeah.
And now we finally have a government in Germany, and a lot of shit has happened in Britain, and a lot of shit has happened in America. And I think it would be a good idea to explain this to each other. So that is the next thing that's going to happen on here. Maybe before that I can play a song again, because I haven't done that in ages. And until then, I've been Rufen.
I've been Kristi.
And I'll see you around.